Even though their story is one of experiences at a very large major urban university, the kind of journey they undertook in the process of shaping this initiative is one that could be adapted in ways on campuses across the country of all sizes and all missions. And so with that, I'm going to have the ball now tossed to David, and I welcome everybody on the call. I should announce that you are muted until the time when there will be questions asked. If you would like to pose a question in the process of the discussion, you can type it into the chat room, or you can raise your hand. And if you note on the upper right corner right now, I have raised my hand. And so we will be alert to people who have posted questions already. And so I think we're ready to go. David, I think the ball is now in your court.
Okay, great, Jeannie. Thanks. That was a great introduction to get everybody thinking about terminology and how important that is and the message it conveys, to the learners and to the instructors on campuses. So, here's just a shot of Wendy and I. We're looking forward to spending the next hour with everyone and to have a very interactive webinar. So looking forward to your questions. So before we get into the meat of things, let me just give you a little bit of background information on the University of Illinois at Chicago. We're an urban public research university. And when I say urban, you can see how close we are located to downtown Chicago by looking at this picture on the left. You can look out the window and see the proximity of the formerly Sears Tower. As a matter of fact, this is finals week this week, and today there were a handful of students out taking a picture of themselves with the Sears Tower in the background because it's a beautiful, cold, sunny day here. We are very large. We're the largest university in Chicago. We have over 27,000 students and about 17,000 undergrads. An incredibly diverse campus. There is no racial majority here. About 40% of our learners are white, followed by Latino, Asian, and African American communities. And about a third of our students, English is a second language. So very, very diverse student population. And in terms of residential versus commuter campus, about 2/3 of our students live more than 1.5 miles from campus, so we would consider them commuters. So, in addition to the diverse student body, we also have an incredible diversity of academic programs and spaces as well. So today, just to go over the learning outcomes quickly, by hearing our story, we're hoping that you learn about the relative importance of these informal learning spaces, what design elements go into them, how to assess them, and how to fund them and keep them going. So maybe a little bit about our office. We are part of academic affairs, which is an important distinction. A lot of people that work on the physical spaces are part of administrative services at different colleges and universities. But we are part of academic affairs. The provost actually created our office because he really wanted a unit that understood the teaching and learning that happens. And he wanted someone that could be an advocate for the academics at the table. And frankly, people that also spoke the language of architects and engineers. So we are the learning space design experts here on campus, and we're that main point of contact for any informal and formal learning spaces on campus. And like it says at the bottom, we try to have a little bit of fun when we can in here. This shot that you're seeing is one of our Oases in our library, which was a precursor to our award-winning Idea Commons project that was developed. It's featured on their website, and it's featured in the Learning Space Toolkit as well. So before I get into this graphic, I just wanted to touch on what Jeannie was talking about before, which was, the importance of terminology. This term Oasis, and Wendy's going to talk a little bit about more contextual what it means here at UIC, but really the term Oasis is similar to that literal definition. It's a place for renewal on our campus. It's a place for the community to come together and for experiences to happen. And with that said, let's look at this graphic. I love this graphic that Shirley Dugdale created, and it shows the formal learning spaces in the oval shapes, and then it shows all this space in between. And there's so much learning that's happening outside these formal learning spaces. The students want to learn 24/7. They want to learn at their own time, when it's convenient for them. So almost every space becomes a learning space. And what we're trying to create on our campus are these sticky spaces. So, the students stick around and they want to be there. So I think this graphic really tries to capture that idea quite well. So, of course, these informal learning spaces really do matter to learning. And whether that's, someone needing, their own time to study quietly or to reflect on what they've learned, recharge their batteries, that's what you can see in this upper left-hand corner, this image in the upper left-hand corner. This is probably one of our smallest learning spaces. This was really a vestibule between the outside and the inside. It's no more than 6.5 feet wide, and by putting some seating in there, some lighting, artwork, and some carpeting, we've created this spot for those individuals looking for a reflective space. And then you see the image in the lower left, and that space is set up a little bit different with the furniture type and the arrangement. It's more about community, trying to build community among the students, have them have opportunities to have peer-to-peer learning, because we know how important those things are for student success, and that's a critical initiative here on our campus, is the success of the students. In the end, it's really no one size fits all, because each student has his or her own learning style, and as a result, we need to provide choice and different options. So, why did we start this informal learning space program? Well, this image, I guess tells the story just by looking at it. So students were sitting on the floors. They actually still continue to sit on the floors today, and so we know our job is still not done. But it shows that the existing spaces weren't serving our learners, that we could do better than that. And there was no unit was responsible for this space. If you look at our space inventory, it wasn't assigned to anyone, so nobody really took care of it. But the students were really yearning for these informal learning spaces. So again, why create such a program? Well, I could guess that in most mission statements of colleges and universities, the word learning isn't in those mission statements. So if learning's a priority, then the learning spaces should also be recognized as a priority. Otherwise, the students are going to go elsewhere to learn, which is what's happening in this coffee shop here. You see students who could and would be on campus if we had the spaces for them are here in the coffee shop. And also, I actually look at this as this is about the future of the bricks and mortar university. So this is an investment in the future, and this is really a place for the community to come together and have a dialogue about what we're going to offer on campus that really makes a difference to the students. So how do we get here? Well, first was finding the candidates for these Oases. And if you go around different campuses and you see students sitting on the floor, or you see an open space that's taken up by vending machines or benches that look pretty unfriendly, well, those are your candidates for spaces. So we found those, and well, great, we found spaces, but we needed some money. So you'd be surprised when you start to to knock on doors, tell people what you're interested in. You'll find a lot of interested and concerned parties. So our initial money came from concerned faculty members, department heads, even some vice provosts. They gave us what I'll call some seed money to buy materials. So, to buy the carpeting, buy the paint, buy the furniture. So we had part of the equation solved, but we didn't have everything. So again, it's looking for partners on your campus. We went to the facility management, the director of facility management, and said, boy, this is what we'd like to do. We'd like to create it. We think there's this need. We purchased the materials, but the trades here, we have carpenters, we have painters, we have electricians. Could you donate the labor to help us, build this space? And the director agreed, and voila, we created a space. And so it was about starting small and then building essentially a prototype or a sandbox, if you will, that that we could see if it was successful or not. And fortunately, as soon as we were done with it, the students were sitting in it actually before we could probably get the tags off the furniture. So we knew we were onto something, and so we continued, with this, asking concerned and interested folks for money and getting the facility management to donate the labor. And where are we now? Well, we have a really wide distribution of these Oases. We have over 30 Oases spread in 13 academic buildings on campus. And this term Project Oases is really a brand. It's a brand for us, and it's basically saying what Jeannie is. It's sending a message out about what we mean, what we want these spaces to mean to people. And that brand is very well recognized by administration, by staff, and we're still working on brand recognition with the students. So, they might talk about it. Some might say Oasis, some might say Lounge. Others might call it something different. So we're working on that. But we do have the support of senior administration here. And in addition to that, by having everyone recognize that we are the learning space design experts and how important these informal learning spaces are to the experience, whenever there's a major project happening on campus, we're at the table, and also it's just part of the planning to know that these informal learning spaces are going to be spread throughout the facility. They're not just going to be located in one area, so they're in close proximity to the formal learning spaces. And with everything these days, in today's economic times, when the financial situations be what they are, we have a very broad funding base. We're not really dependent on any single source for funding, so we tried to spread that out in case something happens to one funding source. We still have other funding sources available, and those are both external and internal, and I'll explain that a little bit later. And then we're also just an integral part of student life now. We've been at it for about 9 years, and so it starts when students come to campus and take student tours. They get shown Oases, explain what these are, and through word of mouth and all the way through graduation, these are an integral part of the student experience. And what I can do is show you this, which was an article from our newspaper. It was written by a student blogger, and it was less than a month ago, right before Thanksgiving, and this student was writing to say, hey everybody, if you're looking for peace and quiet, a place to study or connect with people before finals, check out this list of oases, and he listed, maybe a handful of his favorite oases, and here's one of ours with banquettes and tables that are really set up for people to work together. And that brings us to our first break. So Jeannie, I'll hand it off to you.
I'm open to questions now. Are there any questions from the field? Well, let me start with, I think you are now unmuted, so anyone can enter a question in. You talked about the diversity of your institution. Is there any evidence you have how serve the diversity? You can flip it either way. Did the diversity influence the spaces, or are the spaces making diversity a more robust and interesting part of your community?
Well, I think our diverse student body, everyone here looks at it as such an asset, but I think unless the students have an opportunity to remain on campus and to have an ability to exchange ideas, that it gets lost, that diversity gets lost. So since we do have a fair amount of commuters, and a lot of these are the first generation going to school, they might be coming in, taking classes, going back to their home or going to jobs. So if we can create those sticky spaces where these students are having this interaction, which in my view is such a critical part of higher education, these interactions between the different students, then we really take advantage of that diversity that we have on campus.
We have a question from Sally. Sally, would you like to present it?
Sure. I was just trying to understand, are there any academic areas that are using the Oasis more than other areas?
So when we're talking about the Oases and the academic buildings, we have what we call common use or general purpose classrooms, and these are in buildings and in spaces that don't really belong to a college or a department. They were, there wasn't really a unit taking care of them, so we take care of all the common use classrooms on campus, and so these Oases are sprinkled in these 13 buildings that house all these common use classrooms. So do they cater to one college or another? They're not really meant to, but the College of Liberal Arts and Sciences on campus has probably about 9,000, between 9,000 and 10,000 students, undergrad students, and so a lot of their classes and sections are taking place in these buildings. So they are probably the biggest beneficiary of the Oasis spaces. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I'm just curious though, are there any in the science areas where, again, we're trying to do more teaming and scheming with?
Oh, absolutely. And Wendy's going to show you an example of our Science Learning Center, which is an Oasis which we built specifically for the natural sciences. And so that has features that are specific to to the type of learning that happens there. So I won't answer that just yet. I'll just put it to the side if I could.
Let me introduce the question from Jim Brown and Alvin. It's the same question. It's about the use of technology, but before I let you answer, remind people that no one is on mute now, so everything you say is heard by everybody. So the ambient noise causes some difficulties. So you can see we have two questions there, Wendy and David, about technology, and then we'll move on to the next session.
Sure, great questions about technology, and we're just scratching the surface with that. Wendy's going to show a couple of examples very shortly how we've incorporated technology in the Oases. So if we can if we can shelf that question for now until we can get to that imagery that Wendy can talk about. But I could tell you that we're just getting started with the incorporation of technology in there, and we're working to try to integrate technology even more.
Thank you, David. The ball's now to move forward.
Okay. Okay, thanks everybody. Good questions. So this slide basically, we title it Golden Opportunity, but it's all about the possibilities. It's all about, vision, seeing the space, which is on the left-hand image before, and seeing, boy, this, there's all sorts of possibilities for the space, and it's not serving anything right now besides these vending machines. So, let's look at, what is possible. And to the right, you can see what we did with that exact same space. And there are a lot of different architectural features in there, interior architecture features. And it's obviously to see what they are now, but I'm going to have Wendy talk about them in just a moment, and she'll basically explain to you the kit of parts that goes into these Oasis. History, a little bit of history, during our adolescent stage, let's say after we got started and started to, get people excited about it, we started to tap out the money sources, not borrowing, but getting money from interested parties here and there. There was only so much money that went around, and we really wanted to grow the program. So we went to the provost with a proposal and said, look, would you be interested in providing a one-to-one match for any funds that we could bring in from the outside, gift money, donor money? And the provost said yes, so that was halfway done. And then we went to the development office, to the director of our major gifts group, and said, look, you're out there talking to all these major donors all the time. Could you introduce this idea of funding these Oasis spaces? If they're looking for something that will make an immediate impact, please, try to sell these spaces. And we had a very receptive audience in the director of the major gifts group, and so they started to pitch this idea, and it was a great way actually to bring donors into the campus and to have them have an affiliation with the campus. In this slide, just shows you a little bit about who our major gift donors are. And when I'm talking about major gifts, major is, we might have to put that in quotation marks, because our gifts range in size from $2,000, which isn't that major, $2,000 up to $1 million plus. So we have quite a broad range of gifts that come in. But a very large amount are alumni, which you might expect. But we've had active administrators and active faculty donate to the Oasis, which is always terrific because they want to make a difference while they're still here on campus, and also friends of the university. And our major donors tend to fall within the age of 50 to 70, and it's a pretty even split between men and women. And then, again, along this line of adolescence, of growing up, we knew we couldn't just, have an idea for an Oasis and bring that to development. We needed to do some thinking about all the different Oasis possibilities on campus. So we created a wish list of potential Oases, again, that range in price in terms of, how much money it would take to make it happen. And also, different ones might appeal to different alumni groups. I explained a little bit earlier that the College of Liberal Arts and Sciences might be, the biggest beneficiary because they offer so many sections in these buildings, these academic buildings. But if there was one that appealed to art and architecture alumni or to the education alumni, we make sure to call that out as well. And then it was, we needed to create some visuals, some artistic renderings to show, what our vision was for this space. So, people who might not be graphic thinkers would be able to look at this and see, oh boy, that would be a great space. And so you see this image to the left, which is a rendering of one of our spaces. And Wendy will show you a picture of that Oasis a little bit later to see what the actual one looks like. And then we again had to look at broadening our funding opportunities. Again, in the last 5 years, major gifts, haven't been, let's say, what they used to be. So we actually hired it's a student calling operation, so it's students making calls to alumni, and they do it twice a year. And they're calling and asking, for donations to Project Oasis. And these average donations are less than $100. But when you're talking about, several thousand of them over time, it really makes a difference and can add up. And then we continue to nurture those internal sources. Bringing in outside money, it's almost like creating budget relief for the university, but the provost is committed to this, and it's a priority, and they believe, the provost and senior administration believe it's a critical part of the student success, especially from an undergraduate perspective. And we use a lot of this money from this biannual giving campaign to help maintain the spaces, because what you'll find, if these spaces are successful, the wear and tear on them in terms of the, basically the life of the finishes and furniture is much shorter than you would see in, let's say, a more formal learning space. And so we constantly have to keep these refreshed and looking good, and so that's what that funding source is for. And we also assess these, and we'll talk about assessment a little bit later, because getting that continual feedback loop is incredibly important to understand what are we doing right, what are we doing wrong, what could we improve on. So we're always learning about that as well. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Wendy, and she can start to talk about these kit of parts and what's important. So Wendy.
Good afternoon, everybody. So you might be wondering, why the name Oasis, Project Oasis? So when we started 10 years ago, these bright, inviting, warm spaces were literally oases in the sea of concrete that's just the nature of the UIC, of our very urban campus. So more often than not, we just saw students sitting on the floor. They had no place to gather outside of class. So what do we consider when activating a space? Well, the first and foremost is proximity to classrooms. And that's because when the class ends, we don't want the conversation to have to end. We want there to be a continuation of the dialogue, whether that's between faculty and student or if it's peer-to-peer. So these spaces have to be on the beaten path. They have to be convenient, because students really do have loyalty to the spaces, and they want to be seen and they want to be found by their peers. They want to be happened upon. So it's important that they're in high foot traffic areas. And they don't need to be large. I mean, you saw the one space earlier in the vestibule, and our smallest space is less than 100 square feet. A little bit about the standard features of an Oasis. What defines an Oasis at UIC? Well, the most important thing is furniture, and lots of it. But more importantly is variety in the choice of styles and giving students choices, because we want to accommodate students that are seeking space for group work, but also for those seeking autonomy. So you can kind of see in this image students in lounge seats, but also in the back we've got cafe height, so a variety of choices. Over on the wall here you can see a laptop touchdown area, and that's really important because that has direct access to power. And I can't stress how important having power is and having it in proximity to the furniture, because if you don't have it close by, if you don't have it within arm's reach, students will take your furniture and they will drag it toward those power outlets. So then you're constantly resetting, and that's, of course, a maintenance issue. This also, just to point out, this is the illustration, this is the image, the actual Oasis of the illustration that Dave presented in the rendering just 2 slides earlier. So you can see pretty true to that rendering, a few tweaks here and there, just from some things that we've learned along the way. Spaces should be familial. They should be warm and inviting with lots of color. Again, I said we've got a lot of concrete, a lot of brick on our campus, so we try to infuse it with color in the carpeting, color in the furniture finishes. We favor pendant lighting, so you can see in the image on the left, and it gives it a residential feel. And also the plants you see in the image on the right, are also a nod to that residential feeling. We use artwork by UIC art and design students, so the students feel connected to the space. They're proud of the work they do, and it's a gallery of sorts. In the image on the left, these are photographs actually from a contest that we held with the UIC Study Abroad office. So we had students submit their photographs from their travels, and then we juried them, and now they're permanently installed in that space. Students will come in and get very comfortable in these spaces, so you kind of have to give them over to the students. Like Dave said, we're not even taking the tags off the furniture, and we're not even installing them, and they're already plopping down in them. And you have to get used to the fact that they're going to put their feet on the furniture. They don't even treat it like it's their own home. They treat it worse than their own home. So they really do own the spaces, and at first I found that challenging because things wear down more often, but it is a nod to the success of what you're doing. So I talked a little bit about our standard design features, but we've also have some specialty design features to highlight. And I'd say food is foremost, and this might be the same on your campus, that everybody wants a coffee shop, everybody wants access to coffee. And so having proximity to food is a key to this space success. We don't allow food or beverage in classrooms at UIC, so it's really important that students have a place where they can grab a snack or have lunch or have dinner, because we do have a lot of commuter students coming for night classes. One thing to keep in mind if you are going to have spaces near vending, spaces near food, is that it does impact maintenance on the spaces, because I don't care if you have a Krypton fabric or Gore or anything on those fabrics, if a coffee spills on it and it doesn't get cleaned up for a few days or maybe a month, it will stain. So that does influence how we make selections in our finishes. We choose a lot of dark patterns. This is a poly chair, so that's not an excellent example, but we choose darker carpets because we know that they aren't going to get cleaned unless you have a very strong maintenance program. They aren't going to get cleaned very frequently. Technology. I think there's been several questions that have popped up about what kind of technology are we putting into these spaces, and Dave even mentioned that we're just scratching the surface on this. When we started the program, students came in and they were just happy to have chairs. They were just happy to have a couch and some lighting. But then as students matriculated through and we had new students that were coming in and just assuming these spaces were here, just some carpeting and some chairs weren't enough. And we had to take it to the next level, what we kind of called Oasis 2.0. So we're bringing technology into the spaces now. All the spaces are wireless. And in this instance, this is just a PC, but what's nice about this is that we have TeamSpot software on this PC, and I think some of you might know, but it's a collaboration software, and it allows students to seamlessly file share, and they can edit from their own laptops, and they can just push content to the software, and it gives them access to collaboration software in our Oasis space. We've also been putting LCD panels into some of the Oases, and we're still working out how we're programming those that makes it more than just information for students, but also can engage the student. Have fun with your space. You want to celebrate whatever unique features you have. If you're taking over, a 100 square foot swatch of real estate. In this space, we had a mural painted on this rotunda. We have 3 spaces with rotundas, which are really unique because they have a really interesting sound quality. We've treated them all differently, but in this one, we worked with a donor who commissioned a Chicago area artist who spent 4 weeks over the summer, on his back, a la Michelangelo, to create this beautiful mural that students can come in and, we hope, reflect upon. So the space in this rotunda is more of a reflective space, maybe a little bit more autonomous and less collaborative. So again, that speaks to the variety of choice in spaces. Digital art. So again, working with technology. I mentioned that we use paintings and artwork and photographs and also some mixed media by our student artists. But we worked with a donor who wanted to highlight the library's special collections. So we worked with the library and we digitized parts of the special collections, and it runs on this LCD panel in this library Oasis. So the students have this tremendous gift that to see this artwork, to see these pieces that they would not normally have access to unless they made an appointment. So we've run a couple of different shows. The first one we ran was the Century of Progress, which was in Chicago. Dave, what was that? 1931?
I think 33,
33.
But don't quote me on that.
So I mean, it's just fascinating, and students can sit and just, you know, be part of the art, be part of this installation, grab a cup of coffee, study, and it's just continually going and refreshing. So that, I think, is a really exciting feature and progressive and new. And this is right outside of our Idea Commons, which is in our library. The Science Learning Center. So another specialty feature are the Oases that are also learning centers. And why these are so fantastic is because everything is happening under one roof. They're much larger real estate-wise. And they include informal lounge seating, tutoring spaces, computer stations, as well as vending. So everything's happening here. This one actually is speaking to sciences, but we also have a math learning center, and we're working on a more social sciences type of learning center at present. And another unique feature that I think is a real draw for this space are tutoring services that are offered by our teaching assistants. So if you're taking Chem 101 and you're seeking some support and you're seeking tutoring services, you can go to this space, and during office hours for that TA, they'll be around one of these pods, which you see in the image on the right. They'll have a little sign that's saying Chem 101, and other students from your class or other chemistry sections are coming in, and not only are you learning from the TA, but you're learning from each other. And so you know it's always going to be there. You know the hours that they're there, and we do this for a lot of our larger classes. So the learning centers are sort of like Oasis amplified, because they have so much more than just the lounge furniture. I think that's it. I'd be happy to answer some questions on our kit of parts and how we get the spaces activated.
This is Jeannie. If you read the questions coming in, we have one from Jim Brown and one from Scott Massey and one from Dan Harrigan about assessment of is about assessment of retention of knowledge. So do you want to talk a little bit about these questions or set the stage for your more depth discussion of assessment?
You know, Dave's got a couple of things he wants to touch on, and I'm going to come back to assessment a little bit. So why don't we just hold off on that for a few minutes, if that's okay?
You guys have any questions?
Okay.
Question.
Oh, hold on one second. We have done student surveys. I'll have a little image of that just coming down the pike here in just a minute.
But Dan Harrigan has a question about basically about have we been able to tie, let's say, improvement to learning outcomes, or have we looked at, I think, retention, whether it's retention of knowledge or retention of students and the impact that these spaces have on it. That is something that we're striving for. We're working with our institutional research office on that. We have not been able to make any direct links at this point, but it's something that we're very interested in. So most of the survey work that we've done to date, which Wendy will share with you, is about satisfaction, engagement. It's about needs and wants and things like that, but we haven't gone to that next level.
You have some very specific questions. Let me go first to Sarah Hutton, who speaks, just asked for a little bit more information on the digital archive showing.
How are the digital archive showings managed? We've actually passed that over to the library because the library is responsible and they take care of the digitization of the art. So they work to do that, and I'd be happy offline to get you connected with somebody who might be able to answer that question further.
Thank you. Sarah's a librarian, so I'm sure she will appreciate
that.
Okay,
sure.
There's a question about training students to use TeamSpot, but then there are a few other questions that we should go through before we move forward. Can you? Okay.
I'll just say briefly, we have had TeamSpot open houses along with our Learning Environments and Technology Services office, and there's on-site support that students can get for TeamSpot. So yes, we have done trainings. And then I think there's a question on reserving the space, and that's pretty important, so I'll speak to that. we do not, during the academic school year when classes are in session, we do not allow any reservation of the spaces. And that is because it's really important to us. I told you that these students have loyalty to these spaces, and it's really important to us that when they go and walk into a space, that they are not displaced by an event, that they will, you know, they might be displaced because they're full, but they always know that the spaces are for them because that's the donor intent, that's the intent of the program. We have in the summer or on the weekends, we will have an event. We don't encourage it, and we don't have incentives to have events in the space because it's a wear and tear on the furniture. So there's no reservations of them if we can avoid it, really.
Erin also has a question about how your facilities officers really feel about this, the people who keep the floors cleaned and
well, they get to enjoy them as well on their breaks, to be honest, so they quite like them.
No, it is a good point, and actually what we do is we actually pay for the maintenance of the fabrics. We have monthly spot cleaning of the fabrics on the seats and love seats and chairs. And then we do a biannual deep cleaning, but the facility management's responsible for the cleaning of the floors, and so they actually have a program where they go through and they clean the carpeting. So it's kind of a split responsibility. So we don't expect them to bear the burden of additional maintenance because we're putting fabrics in there. So we take that upon ourselves to keep clean.
But my sense is, just as the wall has been dissolved between the two of you in an office that supports for the provost, because you have a common sense of the language of the learning, the facilities officers now also have a different.
I'm in the middle of a webinar. What's up?
Yes, that's a great point, Jeannie, and actually we are a bridge office. We're really meant to be a bridge between the facility folks and the academic folks.
Yeah.
And because of that, our office is actually located in the facility management building, even though we're an academic unit. So we know all the foremen and all the trades people by name, and we're right across the hallway from the executive director of facility management and the vice chancellor of administrative services. So we have a very good relationship with the folks here, and there is that blurring of the lines, trying to build bridges as much as possible.
And final, Frank has a question about next to faculty offices for the student faculty.
Oh, it's in my garbage. Too late.
May I just say that we are listening to a conversation from the campus about garbage, so if you're talking, please don't. Frank or David?
Sure, it's a great question, and it's something that we're actually getting into now as we design the renovation of our large science and engineering laboratory complex, which is about 450,000 square feet. And we do have an Oasis up there, and it actually serves as kind of like a front porch, if you will, to faculty offices. And so this idea of them being in close proximity to faculty offices so students can wait out there, or if several students have the same question, the faculty member can come out and engage the group in discussions. They hold poster sessions there, again, tying to the natural sciences. So yes, not just proximity to the formal learning spaces, but there should be also proximity to those faculty offices for the reasons that we just talked about.
And Jeannie, I see one question from Brenda about how do we keep the furniture from moving or walking away. I just want to speak to that because we struggled with that in the very early years of the program because a lot of our buildings, there's not necessarily a faculty presence or a sort of an administrative presence, so the furniture did get moved or relocated quite a bit. So we actually started fixing a lot of the furniture to the floor. We worked with the furniture vendors and we ran specials for hardware so that we were able to use a lot of these lovely, lovely pieces from different manufacturers, but we were able to attach them to the floor so they wouldn't walk. And we know that if a student really, or anybody really wanted to get at that furniture, they could, but it's more of a deterrent. And it helps also to keep the spaces in the configuration that best serves the students.
Thank you. Now I think we can hear some more from your story.
Okay, great. This is the last section, so we'll try to get through it in no more than 10 minutes, hopefully less, so we still have some time for some additional questions. Again, just, this idea of getting feedback and assessment, it's a critically important piece, this feedback loop. And so, we conduct informal interviews with our donors, and we also, we had one husband-wife, donors who helped create 2 Oasis spaces. So, we actually commissioned a video so they could basically do a digital storytelling, kind of tell their story about what the Oasis meant to them and how important it was. And so that's featured actually on our website if you went to our home page, and we'll give you that URL toward the end. But here's just a quote from that video, and I'm not going to read the whole thing. I'm just going to call out some key phrases in there. Again, this is an opportunity for people to have a special interaction, with the university, and because of their involvement with Project Oasis, they're increasingly dedicated and devoted to the campus, and they felt like this, they couldn't think of a more worthwhile cause. So, this just, we believe in involving the donors, keeping them involved in the process because they just really enjoy seeing something, be created and have such an immediate impact. Also from these informal interviews with donors, this quote in the upper right, just talking about creating a space that really takes away that hierarchy between faculty member and students. So if they're out of the formal learning space, it takes that pressure off and might make the students more comfortable engaging the professor in a discussion. So with that, I'm gonna toss it back to Wendy, and she's going to talk a little bit more about other assessment methods.
Okay, I know assessment is very important to everyone, and we know our spaces, we know the Oasis spaces are successful because they're so highly utilized. It's, standing room only. Students are in there all times of day, from the minute the building opens to the minute it closes. But we wanted to know how we were doing through the student's eyes, so we went directly to the user. We've tried a multitude of things. I think the coolest thing we've done really is we sponsored a video contest marketed towards the students, a 2 to 3 minute video, use your iPhone, any way you can shoot it. We extended the contest past finals week so students had time to get into the spaces and really do it. We asked for our incentive, which was great, was an iPad, which maybe seems a little expensive, but it was a small expense for a marketing piece, for getting that student feedback. We posted the best videos online. We juried a winner, and let me tell you, we got this incredibly diverse array of submissions. We had one student do a rap. We had another student work with puppets, but the feedback was fantastic. And what came up is that they actually made the connection to the space from a donor perspective as well. The student in the winning video actually thanked the donor for the space and recognized what went into it and what went behind it. And it was a lot of fun, and I would encourage you to do it. It's easy to do, and it just gives you great feedback. This is actually a quote from that student. He just had a very great experience because of the Oases. And I think you really can see that just more of his feedback. Students really get it. They know the value of these spaces and the peer-to-peer exchange, and they miss it if they don't have it. And what we really took away is that they're looking for a place to work, to study, to connect with each other, but also they need a refuge. They just, they need some downtime. They need a place to go and just decompress, and we need to give them those spaces. Another cool thing, we do a lot of cool things here, but another cool thing we did was a digital assessment project. So we worked with our undergraduate student government, and we gave a handful of students digital cameras to go out and shoot the things that work in the spaces, but also where are we missing? What are we missing? Where are the spaces you need? Where do you want us to put the next one? And we got great feedback from them. So we can really tell, if you're not really sure where to go, you can always go to the students because they know that the places that need to be activated, they can help you identify them. So the digital assessment project is a winner for sure. Here's an example of one of our survey questions from the informal surveys that we do. How would you rate the comfort of the furniture in this Oasis student lounge? So are we putting in the right things? We want to know from you. Do we need more tables and chairs? Do we need more lounge furniture? Those are kind of the questions that we'll ask in these informal surveys. And we just put a box out and we have students, we pass them out and we get feedback from students. If it takes less than 5 minutes, I think that's the most successful approach. Naturalistic observations. So this semester was our first partnership with a social psychology course, a community psychology course, and we had a student who took on this project who visited 10 of our Oasis spaces and made observations on behaviors in the space. And this really helped to inform us of what is happening in the space. We had assumptions, but it was really great as he calculated the data to show us what was going on. So we knew students were sleeping, but it turns out not as much as we thought. We knew students were eating in them, they were looking at materials, and there was collaboration going on, but what really led the way was the electronic engagement in the spaces. So it's not necessarily that they're always engaging with one another, but they're looking at their laptop or they're plugged in some way. So I think in the future that this data is going to help us inform us how we make choices in the spaces for furniture, just for design, for the technology that we add to the spaces. So it was just an interesting study, and we got quite a bit out of it. So
yeah, that's and that we can, you know, if there are some questions, we can get into that a little bit more. I think it surprised us if you look at all the activities, whether it's materials in the light blue or electronics.
Let me just define the leaves category. Sarah had that question. That speaks to if a student approaches the space and essentially they're displaced. They can't come and sit down because all the spaces are taken, so the student will leave. So that showed us that maybe we need, you know, more tables and chairs, more spaces for students to sit.
Mm-hmm. But a lot of these behaviors are individual behaviors. The only behavior that is involving 2 or more people was in the blue line. So, and it was a pretty common trend in a lot of the Oases. Only about 10% of the behaviors were collaborative, which was surprising. So we just have 2 more slides to wrap up here. And this, again, is along the lines of reaching out to people, creating partnerships, and also a little bit about technology. We have been working with our CIO on campus about bringing pop-up printing stations to Oases at key points in the semester around midterms, around final exams. So they might pop up and be in the vicinity of one of these Oases or in an Oasis for a week at a time, similar to these images that you see up on the side of stores that pop up in Manhattan for a weekend or for a week. We're also talking with our undergraduate student success center about bringing advising pop-ups to the Oasis. So for those of you that remember Peanuts, if you can picture Lucy with her, you know, little stand for advice for 5 cents, you know, it's a similar idea. Instead of making the students go find the advising center, it's bringing the advising center to them in terms of a pop-up. This is the last slide I wanted to put up, and you know, it's really thanks to these learning space collaboratory webinars that, you know, we listened into the Richmond folks talk about their learning space master plan, or they actually did a classroom master plan, and we're going to embark on a learning space master plan, which involves both formal and informal spaces. And these graphs from the SLAM Collaborative, you know, are an analysis of buildings that they've done in the number of collaborative seats or informal seats to the number of the formal seats. In the left-hand graph is about undergraduate buildings, and the right-hand graph about more professional schools. But if we just concentrate on the left-hand graph, let's say, so for every 8 to 12 instructional seats, the SLAM Collaborative is recommending 1 collaborative seat. So for example, for our common use classrooms at UIC, if we have 9,000 9,000 seats, and we just split the difference in there and say, we'll do 1 seat for every 10 instructional seats, that would mean, we'd need about 900, collaborative seats on campus. And we're well on our way there. We have over 600 seats right now, and we don't think we've hit anywhere near what the need is. But it's an interesting graph. It just shows you the difference between the two. So with that, I want to, just again open it back up to questions, Jeannie.
You have a question there from Scott about your pre-post analyses. Started out small. Did you think about that you were going to get where you are now when you began?
I don't think we saw it exploding like it has. It's been exciting, but I think we were just happy to give students some seats in the beginning, and now it's taken on a life of its own, and it's been very successful, very positive. We get a lot of positive feedback from students, from administration, from faculty. So it's growing in the right direction.
And I see Scott had a question about pre and post surveys or pre and post analysis. We do that with our classrooms, a pre-renovation survey and the same questions post-renovation. But we don't do them with our Oasis spaces because there really wasn't anything there before, so we don't have a good pre and post comparison.
I think we'd all like to hear a little bit more about the pop-ups. And Sarah asked about makerspace.
David, I didn't get anything there with that story right now.
We can't hear you. Who's talking? Hello?
We do the patches to the original amount for
David?
I didn't hear that, Jeannie. Could you restate it for me, please?
I didn't hear the question either. I'm reading pop-up services, any conversations from Sarah concerning makerspaces, and then from Lindsay, where did the idea originate? I'm assuming she's making pop-up spaces, but perhaps not. So,
sure. So how did the idea of pop-ups originate? I think, again, it's, we're always trying to, continue conversations with people. If we're having conversations and reaching out to people about spaces or reaching out to students, we have an advisory board for our office, which is made up of half students and half faculty. And so we get ideas all over the place, and we just, it's fun to make connections and try to, help people visualize what we're talking about. And so these pop-ups, I think, are a very interesting direction that will be headed, as well as trying to incorporate more technology into the spaces. And then, using the feedback that we've gotten from those naturalistic behaviors to also perhaps pilot some different furniture types in different spaces, and again make observations to see how they're using them differently and helping them be more collaborative spaces.
Tell us about how your advisory group operates. Do students meet once a semester, once a year?
We meet once a semester, and again, we give them an update on what we've been working on, what we're planning, kind of long-range plans. For example, this Learning Spaces master plan, and then we also talk about what we're planning and solicit direct feedback on, the designs that we have kind of underway, and they'll bring them out to other people, and so we're able to reach a fair amount of folks through this advisory board. But yeah, it meets twice a year, and it's been a great thing.
Who else is on the board?
Just students and faculty, and they're spread around campus, and some of those students represent undergraduate student government, some are from the Honors College, others are just at-large students that are interested in learning spaces, and faculty, again, we try to get them spread across campus so they're not concentrated in any one discipline. So we have from the natural sciences, social sciences, the languages, engineering, etc.
University of Illinois Urbana, I think they win the prize for having 14 people on the call, which may be the most, but others can dispute that if you have more than that. They're asking about, you have a per square foot estimate of your lowest and highest budget for a space? How would you tell us?
We'd tell you that it wouldn't really work to apply it that way because we really work, again, our lowest budget space is probably a couple $1,000.
Less than $2,000 in the early days.
In our highest is gone up to over $1 million, and that couple thousand square foot, that'll buy us, you know, a couple of pieces of furniture, some carpet, and you know, we'll put a painting on the wall, and then we'll get the labor donated from our facility management group. And so the key, I think the key takeaway from this webinar is that we're not doing anything special. Any one of you can do exactly what we're doing. All you have to do is start small, have a will to do it, have conversations, reach out to people, because there's plenty of interested parties to make this happen. But anyone can do what we're doing. It's nothing special that we're doing here.
Are you going to bring food trucks in?
We actually have food trucks on campus now. That's been a struggle in Chicago, but we're happy to say that right on one of the cul-de-sacs on campus, there's a food truck there almost every day. And so we do have an outdoor Oasis, so we could maybe just get them to take their food from the food truck over to the outdoor Oasis and eat it.
So did you answer the question about losing furniture? Is there any theft at all?
Well, it's greatly decreased since we started fixing the furniture. So we, you know, and when we say, I mean, there was some theft, but there was also just reallocation of resources. You know, faculty maybe would drag a chair into a faculty space, or furniture would get moved into a classroom. So it's really just a deterrent from the furniture moving in different directions. But yes, it's gone down since we started fixing the furniture.
And we've actually,
electronic devices, are they tethered?
They are tethered.
They are tethered, and we haven't had that problem in the spaces.
In the last 2 years, have we had any theft of furniture?
We have not.
We've had, in the last several years, no theft of furniture, and we've never had a theft of an electronic device because they are secured.
And people love the spaces, so they watch them?
I do believe that's true. I don't think, you know, students or learners on campus are going to destroy something that they take, you know, advantage of on a daily basis. And
great pride in as well. We know that from our student survey feedback that they do have pride for the spaces.
Well, Jim Brown reminds us that 12 are watching from Oxford College, and we appreciate that. We know about their good planning over the years at Oxford. And I don't see any other questions, so I would just like to conclude both with saying thank you to Wendy and to David. And one question: are the spaces open 24 hours?
The buildings, if a building is open 24 hours, for example, in the library, yes, that's available 24 hours. But a lot of the other buildings might open at, let's say, 6 in the morning and might close at midnight. It really depends on when the main doors to that building are opened and closed.
So I think this is a wonderful webinar. I've enjoyed working, as always, with Wendy and David and learning more about their interesting project. And I announced those on the phone on this webinar that our next webinar is going to be January 30th, and we just set the date for this yesterday, and it's going to be with the new Astro Engineering program building at the Iowa State University, which, precisely like Wendy and David did, the professor, for a variety of reasons, needed a learning space, a classroom within his building rather than a classroom across campus. He's the chair of the Astro Engineering department. And so he took over an alcove underneath a stairway and created an open learning space for 120 people. And the story says, tucked in a large alcove under the central stairs of Howe Hall, the classroom for up to 120 students features 12 monitors throughout, blacklit whiteboards, movable chairs, and a large display screen. The room is open concept, divided from the rest of the atrium by a curving translucent glass wall. And there's more about it, so we invite you to join us at the end of the of January for the next in a series of webinars about learning spaces. And we hope you have a happy holiday, a restful holiday, and again, thanks to Wendy and David, and thanks to all of you for joining us. Bye-bye.
Thanks, our pleasure.